Hello and welcome to the um, Formula One Father and Son podcast. I am the father in the title. I'm Graham Miller, and Toby is here, who's my son.
Hello.
And well, we actually had a race to talk about this time in Australia, which makes a bit of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
But as we do every week, we'll dial back from the race a minute and go into. Did you see any of the free practice, Toby, or did you not get up?
I think I maybe stayed up for the first 20 minutes of FP1, but then I fell asleep.
One in the morning or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I must admit I didn't stay up for any of the free practices. I did see the qualifying though.
Yes, I saw the qualifying, but free practice was actually quite... Well, FP1 was interesting, I would say, because Alex Albon crashed, didn't he?
Yeah.
He smashed his chassis to bits.
Yeah, and I'm kind of wondering if that's like a second or third level fallout from the politicking going on at Red Bull. Because all the internet is full of rumours of Max literally going to not literally, but figuratively going to throw his toys out of the pram and walk away from Red Bull if they get rid of Helmut Marko.
Yeah.
And if he does that, there'll be a spare seat at Red Bull. And Albon knows the team. I don't know if he's actually a contracted Red Bull driver on loan to Williams or if he's broken out of his Red Bull contract and he's just a driver.
I think he is still contracted to Red Bull and on loan. I think he's still got the Red Bull logo on his helmet somewhere. But also, right. I heard that they offered him a seat last year, I think, when Perez was struggling, and he said no.
Yeah, but I think the reason for that is not to be blunt, Max Verstappen.
I mean, yeah, actually, partnering Max might be the problem that he wants to avoid.
Yeah, because I mean, we said it on previous podcasts. Max has, apart from Perez, kind of psychologically destroyed a lot of his teammates.
I wouldn't say Perez isn't psychologically destroyed at this point.
Well, he's kept in the team for pretty much longer than anybody else. Everybody else has left either the team or the sport.
Yeah. What did Ricardo... They were together for 16, 17 and 18. This is Perez's third year because he was there 21, 22... Oh no, this is his fourth year. If he finishes this, he'll have lasted longer than any other driver.
Yeah, I've just found on the ever-reliable Wikipedia, in 2022, Albon returned to a race seat with Williams. Christian Horner said that Albon retained a link to Red Bull and the team had an option to recall him for 2023, which is what you're talking about, when he said, yeah, no.
Yeah. But has that expired now?
I don't know. I mean,
it's an option to recall him, but is that... hang on. Albon's contract marked the end of his Red Bull affiliation, though he maintained that he stated that he still maintained a very close relationship with the team.
Yeah.
So legally, he's a free agent now. He could drive for anyone.
But if Max left and Christian phoned up, they'd find a way out of that contract.
Yeah, because the Red Bull is... I mean, Albon would win races in the Red Bull.
Oh, easily. He's actually, since he's left, he's been really... I mean, the mark of a really good driver is the fact that he's getting performances out of that Williams that it really shouldn't be doing, to be blunt.
Yeah, I mean...
He's driving it beyond its ability.
Yeah. And I did some analysis just because I was bored.
Yeah.
The total percentage of points scored for a constructor championship. So, the percentage of the points that each driver scored for the team.
Yeah.
In Albon's one full season with Red Bull, he scored 33% of the points.
Yeah.
And that's the same as what Perez did in 2021 and 2023.
Yeah.
So Perez was about as bad as Albon was in the Red Bull in his worst year.
And in the last season, I dread to think how many of Williams' points are just due to Albon.
Oh, I did look that up actually. It was 97%.
Yeah.
Or did Logan even score any points last year?
I've got a feeling he might have got a duck, to be honest.
I know he got whitewashed qualifying-wise, and that means that Albon, he was on both sides of a qualifying whitewash, because he also got washed by Verstappen.
So, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. One is that a team manager, if you can only put one driver in, it's going to be Albon no matter what. And the other one is, from Albon's point of view, he's going to want every chance to impress Christian Horner, just in case.
Yes. And I mean, if the team principal said, we know it was your fault you crashed a car, but would you like to race anyway? No racing driver would say, no, I wouldn't like to race. I mean, maybe the very most honourable, for whom, like, if this was like Leclerc and Sainz, or like Verstappen and Perez, well, I mean, Verstappen would definitely steal Perez's car, but if this was like Hamilton and Russell at the end of the season when the championship was locked in place, they probably wouldn't swap them.
No.
But because it's Williams, and because every point to Williams could be worth millions of pounds, and because, you know, down at the bottom end, single points can be the difference between 10th and, like, 6th.
Yeah.
I mean, Williams have 0 points at the moment.
On the commentary, they made it out that Logan Sargent was being honourable and saying, here, you can have my car, but...
Yeah, I mean,
I can't...
That's spin, I think.
Also, you can't imagine that there are many team bosses queuing up to talk to Logan Sargent's agent.
No, unfortunately. He's not bad. I don't think he's as bad as Latifi, who was pretty slow, but...
I mean, it's going to be fairly easy for the team boss of Williams. Is that James Fowles?
It is James Fowles, who used to be head of strategy at Mercedes.
Yeah, but if James said to him, we really need your car to score the points, he hasn't got much influence to say, no, I really want to race, has he?
Well, I mean, he kind of has the sort of moral high ground of, it's my car and I didn't crash. So, but... Yeah, I think they put out statements for all three of them, James and Alex and Logan. And Logan's was like, this is the hardest day of my career. And then Alex's was like, Logan's being a consummate professional and he's being... And I think, that's probably just them trying to mitigate it.
And ultimately, from Logan's point of view, it's what Lewis always says, it's a team game. He's made the decision that will get the most points for the team.
Yeah.
And that's what they meant. But the other thing about qualifying that I noticed, to kind of move ahead a bit, is the gap. Was it like 0.040 that Lewis lost out on Q3 by?
Yeah, it was tiny.
And I actually looked at the timing sheets, and the people, Hamilton in 11th, and the 3 cars behind him, were all faster than Alonso's Q3 time to get 10th.
I mean, if Hamilton had done that time in Q3, he'd have been... 8th on the grid.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8th.
So it wasn't really a kind of a complete collapse from Hamilton at all.
It was just unlucky. But then again, 8th... Well, no, Russell was 7th. So 8th in a Mercedes. As much as it's a bit disappointing, Russell was only 7th. So maybe that's just where the Mercedes is now. And he just got unlucky.
It's the worst start to a season that he can ever remember.
Yeah.
Including, I think 2009.
Yeah, well, 2009 was a bad start for everybody other than Brawn, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but historically, he has been worse at the start of a season than the end.
Yeah.
Like 2018, 2017, his first 4 or 5 races, he's not really there. And, like, people like Ricciardo can win in China and Monaco and such. And Vettel can sneak a few wins in, and then he just cranks it up and gets dominant towards the last half.
But the problem is, and I've heard everybody in Mercedes say this, the car isn't predictable. So he doesn't know what he needs to do. I mean, I think in those previous seasons he understood the car, and he understood how to get the most out of it. Even if they weren't there, he would come off a race where he'd be coming 4th or 5th and gone, oh, I know, if we do this, do this, do this. And then by mid-season, as you say, he's dominant. And I think at the moment, everybody from Toto Wolff downwards, they just look confused. They're just looking at that car and saying, we don't understand the aero package.
Which is not a great position to be in, really.
actually quite terrible.
Because, I mean, how do you develop that?
Yeah.
They're doing the thing that they did last year, which is just to throw things at the car and see if it sticks.
Yeah.
Unlike some races, they'll be P2 because the aero just works at that track, and then the next race they'll be struggling to get out of Q2.
Yeah.
So that's kind of just... I mean, in the end, qualifying for Mercedes almost didn't matter because they both retired.
Well, yeah. I mean,
So,
it was actually...
bad qualifying and no points is just like one of their worst weekends in a long, long time, I think, Mercedes.
Yeah. I'm actually... what happens is, because we don't live in the same house at the moment, me and Toby, we had a very long WhatsApp conversation while we were watching the qualifying in the race.
Hmm.
And it's quite interesting because it's not like thinking back to how the race went, but we were like, Sites got P2 in qualifying 15 days after surgery.
Yep.
And
I think, yeah, and like, he says he's out of a job, but I don't think he is. Even if he doesn't get a Formula One drive, which is unlikely, any sports car team or IndyCar or Formula E, any professional motor racing team in the world at this point would sign him.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you look at it from a Formula One point of view. He's fast.
Yeah.
He's friendly. He's got a brilliant strategy brain. He's got social media nailed. He's popular.
Yeah, he's very switched on in the car. He's a bit like Alonso, actually, in that respect.
Yeah,
That's something they say about Alonso, is that he can look at a situation while he's driving and assess it and, do what he needs to. And that's kind of like...
But even the stuff outside the car, he interviews brilliantly well. He's funny. All the other stuff that they need. He's bound to have a drive next year, although obviously it's going on tape, isn't it?
Yeah. So
I can't imagine. Well, aren't there 13 out of contract at the end of the year, plus there's a seat at Mercedes, so...
I made a spreadsheet, because I'm such a nerd. Making F1 spreadsheets is just something I do in my spare time.
Oh, everything's better with a spreadsheet.
I made a grid. So Alpine, RB, which is Toro Rosso, Kick, which is Sauber, and Haas are totally empty for next year.
Yeah.
Only Ferrari and McLaren are actually booked up.
Yeah.
So he could go to Red Bull.
I thought Max was on a long contract.
Yeah, but Perez isn't.
No. And
if you're Christian Horner and you look at Perez and you look at Sainz, I'd choose Sainz personally.
Yeah, but the trouble is, for a wingman, you don't want somebody that good.
Yeah, but do you think Sainz is good enough to actually trouble Max and threaten him for a championship, or is he going to be good enough that he could be, a Barrichello on the level of Max?
Well, Sainz is upsetting Leclerc, and Leclerc is one of those tipped for world title guys, so...
Yeah. So, although one of them, Martin Brundle, the commentator, said that he didn't think that that Sainz was tipped for a Mercedes seat for some reason. He didn't mention who he heard it from, but I assume he knows people in the paddock.
Yeah.
He said that he's not really in the running at Mercedes, is Sainz, which seems like a mistake. Then maybe he doesn't want to go there because they don't look very good.
I don't have that Kimi Antonelli that they're trying to bring up as well.
They do, but he's very young and he's not exactly setting Formula 2 on fire at the moment, although it's only been 2 races.
Yeah.
I think he might have to take a bit of extra time in Formula 2. Maybe, either that or he could go into a junior team like Williams or Aston Martin or a Mercedes-powered team just to improve a little bit.
So what did we make of the race?
It was exciting at the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
And then the middle bit was actually kind of boring in hindsight.
Yeah, I mean, it had a nice kind of split strategy.
Yeah.
One thing I took away from it that I haven't actually seen reported anywhere.
Yes.
And analysing it back, it was a terrible race for Perez.
Yeah, actually.
And if Perez had a very narrow escape, because imagine this as a scenario. Imagine that Max Verstappen's brakes had worked.
Yes.
First stint, Max and Sainz are duelling. It looked like Sainz pretty much had the measure of him.
Well, we don't know when Verstappen's brakes issue started.
I would say it's probably that corner on lap 3 where he went wide and let Sainz through. But
he said himself it was when the lights were out, and that he was just pushing through, effectively having the handbrake on one brake. That's why the rear end was sliding. Yeah, it's nice to sort of think that Sainz would be able to fight Verstappen on pure pace. Maybe he can, but it could also have been that his car was destroying itself.
Yeah. But then, if that had happened, after the first set of pit stops, Leclerc has got himself out to the middle of the McLarens.
Yes.
And then Ferrari have got cars on strategies that were about 8 to 10 laps apart. And are attacking Verstappen.
Yeah.
And Verstappen has got no wingman. His wingman, who's there to protect him against strategy attacks, is somewhere behind Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri.
Yeah.
And you've already got the Ferraris on a split strategy, so they can undercut him whenever they want.
Yeah.
And if they send, I think they would have had to send Sainz in to do the undercut and left Leclerc out long, and then what do you do if you're Christian Horner? You're just like, well...
Yeah, our driver's in 5th.
Yeah. And that would have really exposed the kind of weakness of Sergio Perez, unfortunately.
Well, I think it did anyway, because neither Ferrari had any competition.
No.
And in the fastest car, Perez was behind 2 entire teams' worth of drivers, Ferrari and McLaren.
Yeah.
Made it look like the 3rd fastest car, really.
And they did say that he sucked up a visor tear-off.
Yeah, he did, to his floor, which caused a lot of downforce loss.
They said 0.2 seconds a lap, but...
Is that enough to explain it?
Also, I was kind of thinking... I thought the whole point was that the air was sucked under the cars, produced downforce, and was washed out.
Well, I don't know.
I'm not actually seeing how... And also, isn't it a bit weird that something that's effectively a crisp packet could actually derail the car by that much? It's kind of...
I don't know. Formula 1 cars are a bit like that, actually.
Yeah, they are kind of the aero and everything in the tyre taken.
Yeah, I mean...
That's the other thing. The reason that the Ferraris were so strong is because of the tyre management, which is the dullest part of the sport, but...
Yeah, it really is.
It really kind of matters now.
It's driving less quickly competitively.
Yeah, and managing it. So I think they really would have had an answer for Max.
Yeah.
On this track yesterday, but like I say, it really exposed Perez.
Which it's weird because that should have been a good opportunity for Perez to get a win or a podium, even,
or at least to show to Christian Horner that he's worth keeping in the team.
Because now he's actually behind Leclerc in the championship now.
Yeah, and actually because of that, I think Red Bull are only 4 points ahead in the constructors.
Yeah, only 4 points.
Everybody knows there will be loads more dominant races, and it will continue to happen.
Yeah, but at this position, it's not a great position for Perez to be in.
No, it's quite a weak
race.
Yeah, and like I say, I think he was at first glance, and I'm sure the strategy guys in Red Bull will have realised this immediately. But at first glance, it was like, I think somebody said it was a forgettable race for Perez.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of saved by the fact that Verstappen wasn't there.
Well, kind of, but I think 5th place, regardless of where Verstappen is kind of not great anyway.
Not in the car he's got.
No.
I'm trying to think logically. Ferrari had a brilliant race.
Yeah, the best race they possibly could have had.
Yeah.
Because Leclerc got the fastest lap as well.
Did you see there's a photo? I'll explain to our listeners, Toby had his appendix out when he was a few weeks shy of his 7th birthday, I think.
Yes.
There is a photo of Norris and Sainz together, and Sainz lifts up his shirt and he's still got all the medical dressings and the plasters all right across his belly.
Yes, like me, except my scar is now faded.
Yeah. So yeah, brilliant race for Sainz.
He said it felt different in the car. He could feel his insides moving around more.
Interestingly, actually Alex Albon warned him about that.
Yes, he
Because
must have.
Albon
Well,
did the same thing last
you
year.
get your appendix out. You text Albon and say, what's going to happen?
Oh, apparently he was doing like hyperbaric chambers. He was doing magnetic healing.
Okay, I didn't have any of that nonsense.
He was on a special diet. It was incredible.
Well, I got served burger and chips in the hospital canteen. And then I got sent home and just watched Doctor Who under a blanket for 6 weeks.
Equally valid way of getting over it. Probably less G's on your...
Mine's more fun, I would say.
Yeah, and less stressful.
Yeah, definitely.
McLaren, again, stomping. Really good race from them.
Yeah, and quite noble of Oscar Piastri to let Norris go at his home race, I think.
Yeah, and I think it was because of the tyre strategies, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, it's quite easy at your home race, especially because Norris ended up third.
Yeah.
And no Australian driver has ever got a podium at their home race before.
Oh, damn.
So I think it'll come for him eventually, probably sooner than it will for
He
Ricciardo.
actually is one of those... Because I've been watching it for so many, decades actually. You always get these drivers who come up and they're like, oh my god, they walk on water, they're the next, the next Ayrton Senna. And then they get in a car and you're a bit like, eh?
Yeah, like Nick de Vries was a bit like
Nick de Vries, Hulkenberg.
Yeah.
Hulkenberg was talked about in the same breath as Hamilton when they both came up.
Yeah, he was really good in his first year, actually.
Yeah.
But,
And then the really unfortunate ones like Kubica.
Yeah.
Which is nothing to do with his fault, but... So it's nice to see Piastri actually fulfilling legacy. I'm going down... Oh, yeah, I'm going down the grid.
Yes.
There's the Alonso-Russell incident.
Oh, yeah, this was... Again, I was actually... Because this was, I think, 5:30 in the morning. I'd woken up at 3:30. I was actually falling asleep. And I heard the commentators pick up in volume, and I opened my eyes, and Russell was just across the track, ruined. And I was like, wow, what happened? I've completely missed it. I mean, they showed lots of replays and stuff, but they did sort of jerk me awake at the end.
Nobody was watching that fight live, so...
But yes.
I made a really bad mistake today. As like, my Facebook feed is trying to be TikTok, so it's trying to learn what I like.
Ugh.
So I keep getting all these F1 magazines coming up, and I started reading some of the comments. And I'd say about 70-80% of the comments were anti-Russell.
Yeah.
They were all like, oh yeah, but it's called racing and he can't drive. And after a bit I realised Johnny Herbert was one of the stewards, because they always have an ex-driver.
Yep.
So you've got Johnny Herbert and 3 other professional stewards sat in a room for 3 hours.
Yep.
They had access to all the telemetry from both cars for the whole race.
Yes.
They had interviews with the drivers that the drivers knew wouldn't be going out to the press. And they made the decision with a full copy of the FIA rules in one hand.
Yes.
And then you get somebody sat behind a keyboard who's just watched it. And I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was surprised by the penalty, because it was 20 seconds.
Right, I can explain that.
Yes.
They would have issued him a drive-through penalty.
Right, but it was the last lap of the race. He couldn't have done it.
And there's actually a provision in the rules to convert it to a 20-second penalty.
Because it takes about 20 seconds to do a pit stop, stopping and changing tyres.
Yeah.
So drive through, I don't think you even drive through your pit box.
No, you just go through the pit lane.
It's about 20 seconds.
Yeah, and it's actually covered in the rules because you've got some like 3 or 5 laps in which to take it. But there were 3 or 5 laps left in the race, so it wasn't a harsh 20-second penalty as in 4 times worse than a 5-second penalty. It was a drive-through.
Yeah. And also it did actually have an impact on his race because he was more than 5 seconds ahead of whoever was behind him, Stroll, I think.
Yeah. I honestly think Alonso... I mean, he couldn't really explain it. I think Alonso was trying to unsettle Russell.
Yeah,
I know when people are driving and you get somebody tailgating you, the obvious thing to do is lightly tap your brakes and then boot the accelerator. So your brake lights light up, the guy behind you brakes, you accelerate, and the gap opens up. And I think that's what he expected to happen.
I think he also messed up the early braking manoeuvre because he did it very, very early. He had to get back on the throttle.
Yeah.
Before he turned in, so...
And he did weird, like, downshift, upshift as well.
Yeah.
But I think he honestly thought he'll unsettle Russell. It's the last lap of the race. Nobody will really notice.
Yeah.
And it was just before DRS zone, so he wanted to kind of break the slipstream before the DRS kicked in.
Yeah.
And because it was a big crash, it got investigated. And also, I think, to be fair, he's a driver with 20 years experience, but that probably means he's not 100% used to either the massive amounts of telemetry the stewards can see and the effect that the ground effect cars have if you mess them around.
Yeah. Well, I think Alonso plays these games all the time. It's what he does. I think every now and then it goes wrong, and he gets in trouble. Yeah, he gets caught for it because, like, again, he did say, and I think this is a bit telling. He said he made excuses about having brake issues and stuff.
Yeah.
To which the stewards and the telemetry said, no, that's not what a brake issue looks like. Lifting off the throttle and getting back on it. And then he said, if there was no gravel or no wall there, it wouldn't have been a penalty. And I think that's him saying, I know it was naughty, but if Russell hadn't crashed so obviously, I would have got away with it, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that, and I just thought, that's a really weird comment, but I suppose what he means is if there was a concrete runoff area, he would have forced Russell wide, basically, and Russell would have come back on, and he would have got his place, yeah.
Yeah, Russell wouldn't have skittered across the gravel. He'd have like, skidded, but he maybe would have got it back and gone, forwards and got on the radio and said, what was he doing? Maybe a 5-second penalty or an investigation, but nothing serious. Yeah. But I also think it's because Russell was stranded in the middle of the track and he was on the racing line and his floor was pointing towards where the cars were coming from.
Yeah.
And Russell knows that the floor of the car has no crash structure whatsoever. And it's basically a few inches of metal and wood between his backside and the floor. So that's why on the radio he was shouting for a red flag so frantically, because he knew he could be genuinely seriously injured if someone just T-boned him.
Oh no, you see, I've read the comments. Keyboard warriors.
What's the actual truth then?
In the actual truth, seconds after a big crash like that, where he doesn't even know which way is up, he calculated that if they had a red flag instead of a virtual safety car, the race would be annulled and it would go back to the previous lap and he would keep his place and his points.
Yes, you're right. He was panicking because of his lost 7th place, not because he might die in a crash.
I mean, potential death, 3 points.
It's very obvious that.
And also, it's much easier to shout virtual safety car than it is red flag.
Yes, he should have got on the radio and said, "I say, chaps, do you think there could be any possibility of a mitigating, maybe some double waved yellows in this sector to warn the cars of my presence?"
I mean, even in the time it took them to press the VSC button, I think 3 cars went round him.
Yeah. Stroll's engineer, I listened to the radio, Stroll's engineer was he said, he just started off by saying, slow, in sector 1, go slow, there's a car in the track. Yeah. So instead of like saying, oh, there's double waved yellows, it's Russell, he just said, go slowly.
Yeah. Because in that case, you just want to get the message across.
Yeah.
And if you're a driver and your engineer actually says, slow down, you don't kind of think, what the hell? You lift off a bit first and then you kind of work out what...
I mean, you probably do think, what the hell, but you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no way your principal race engineer would come on the radio and tell you to slow unless it was...
Yeah, unless it was like a car issue or something like that. Yeah, so...
I'm trying to think. The midfield...
Mercedes, they're not on the leaderboard because they're both at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely Lewis's worst start to a season. I actually think it was probably, aside from the times when Lewis and Rosberg were crashing each other out of races and arguing.
Yes.
It was probably
Mercedes' worst weekend. Unless you count weird things like Abu Dhabi 2021 probably wasn't great either.
No.
Or, Spain 2016.
Yeah.
In terms of just pure pace and, like, everything. Because even on pace, they wouldn't have been higher up the field than 6th.
It would be another... As I said on our WhatsApp conversation, it would have been another forgettable 7th and 9th, probably.
Yeah. I can see Hamilton getting 9th because he got 9th last time.
Yeah, which is like 2 points. It's what the...
Yeah,
Aston Martin actually had a really good showing. Both cars in the points.
Stroll ahead of
the rest.
Alonso.
Yeah.
I mean, Stroll out-qualified Alonso as well. He didn't have the race pace. But 8 points is pretty decent.
And also Haas up into the points is pretty good.
Yeah, Haas have actually got 4 points total now, which is only 2 behind... Oh, I've still got them as AlphaTauri. 2 behind, Toro Rosso, basically.
Yeah. RB.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm trying to think. Alexander Albon nearly got points for Williams, but definitely justified his seat in his opponent's car.
Yeah, because I mean, if, one more car got a penalty or it crashed out or something, that's points.
Yeah.
I do think Sargent wouldn't have been in 11th in that situation.
Alpine are now looking as bad as Sauber.
Which is technically better than they were, I think.
Well, it's an improvement, yeah.
They still have no points. Which is not great, even when Haas have points.
Yeah.
There was a brief...
Ricardo's not got his mojo, has he, this season?
No, Ricardo... I've heard 2 competing rumours about Ricardo.
Yeah.
One of them says that Marco has offered him an ultimatum and said, if you don't improve in the next 2 races and beat Tsunoda, we'll put Lawson in your seat.
Yeah.
And then I've immediately seen another website that says, no, that's not true. So who knows?
I mean, I've seen rumours that say that unless Horner leaves, Max Verstappen is heading to Mercedes. And I've seen other websites that say that's never going to happen. So,
I mean, if you're Red Bull's top management, who do you want to stay in the team? Bearing in mind that Horner is also getting ideas about buying out his, buying out the company and taking on a more Toto Wolff-like role. I'd probably want to keep Verstappen if that was me.
Well, yeah, I mean, Verstappen is the golden goose at the moment. I actually think, objectively, it would be entertaining, let's say, if Max went to Mercedes.
It would be very entertaining.
Because Lewis has built that company into a very, and I hate the word, but woke is the best. He's made a massive push for diversity. I know they have this kind of flat management structure. I know they do things like mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
They're very big on well-being. And I get the impression, and I could be wrong, that Max is quite aggressive and quite old school. And like as we keep saying every week, he tends to intimidate his teammates. He comes across as a bit of a bully.
I don't know if that's... I think nowadays, Max is kind of...
mellowed.
He's mellowed, and I think he doesn't care about much apart from racing anymore. I think that's really his...
I'm just wondering if there would be a culture clash if he went there.
I don't know if there would. I think maybe they would either shift to accommodate him, or he would just quite like it because they're just like, yeah, we're not going to bother you with politics or anything. Just race and we're.
Yeah, no, you might be right. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see, but
I was more thinking of the teammate battle between Russell and Verstappen.
Yeah,
2 famously very level-headed drivers.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
It would be quite... Is Russell still in contract for a while?
Yeah, he's now Mercedes' main guy, so he's got contract for next year.
Yeah.
Yes. Fernando Alonso is out of a contract as well, by the way. Just...
Yeah.
Anyway, yes.
Somebody who listened to the podcast said to me that they listened to last week and said, well, it's a bit weird now because you're talking about how many points possibly Max could get, and he's just lost out on 26 points this weekend out of the total.
Yeah.
But I think because there's so many races and so many sprints, that's less than 4% of the overall total. So he's still on track for over 90% of the season, as it were.
Yes, if he wins in fastest laps every other race.
Yeah, if he continues the way he's dominated so far in 2023, he's still on for a good high 80s, low 90s% of the season, which is kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, so only Verstappen and Sainz have won the last 25 races. 26 if you count Abu Dhabi 2022.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you count that?
Because, Verstappen didn't win Baku. So Verstappen and Sainz won, 18 races at the end of 2023. And now 3 races here, so it's 21 in a row for just 2 drivers.
Yeah, and...
who are both teammates at Toro Rosso.
Yeah, and I dread to think what it is if you say Ferrari or Red Bull.
Just Ferrari or Red Bull, you go back to Brazil 2022, which was Russell.
Oh, yeah.
But
that's
then,
nearly a season and a half.
But then if you do Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull, you have to go back to Ricciardo 2021.
Yeah.
Who won Italy for McLaren.
Which kind of brings us back to he's not really on it at the moment for Ricciardo, doesn't it?
It's a bit weird. I mean, it would be a bit sort of sad just to say that he's past it now.
Well, I was thinking that about, we had such high hopes for Lewis and he was so dominant for so long. I would have liked him to have almost retired at the end of 2021 and just left and gone, well, I've won a race in every season I've ever competed in.
Yeah, because now he's gone 3 or so seasons winless. It's a bit sort of...
It's a bit like... I never expected him to have that kind of tail-off, faded hero kind of career. I mean, maybe he'll have a resurgence at Ferrari, we don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the only hope. I mean, in that Ferrari, this year's Ferrari...
Yeah.
He would be wheel-to-wheel with Sainz, I think.
Or with Sainz and Max, which would be absolute carnage.
Yes. I'm saying in this race, if he was in the car instead of Leclerc, for example.
Oh my God, it would. And if there had been no technical DNFs, it would have been absolute.
Yeah. Because I do think, given that Russell is also struggling, I think the Mercedes this year is just a bit naff.
Well, Karun in the pits, Lewis Hamilton was interviewed and he said it messes with your head.
Yes.
And then Karun said the thing is, the car, if it's not predictable, every corner you approach, you're not thinking, I know exactly where to brake. You're thinking, if I brake here, will the car turn in? Will the back end stick? Will there be a slide? How much will the slide be? And all those kind of thoughts and all those kind of what ifs add to like tenths of a second, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, the opposite of that is Carlos Sainz again. His Q2 time and his Q3 time. Have you heard this stat?
No, Q3 and Q2.
His times were 0.008 seconds apart.
Sainz.
Sainz in Q2 and Q3.
Yes.
He was 0.008 of a second difference in his lap times.
Which goes to show that's the maximum pace of the Ferrari.
Yeah.
And Sainz is consistent.
Yeah, not only did he extract the maximum pace, but he had confidence that he could do that again.
Yeah.
He could repeat it, and there were leaves on the track was cooling because it was the afternoon, the wind direction was shifting, but the car was stable enough that he could just do that again.
Yeah.
And I think that is the big difference, and that's what is wrong with the Mercedes, is that it's not stable.
Yeah.
It's not predictable.
Yeah, and that does... It affects your confidence going into every lap.
Yeah, and even every corner, I would say.
I mean, you can see the difference between the Mercedes and Perez, because Perez came out of the pits, Hamilton was right behind him, he had a look, and then 4 or 5 corners later there was a second gap between them, and Hamilton himself came on the radio and said, that car is so fast.
Which one of them said it's a rocket ship? I think that was...
Russell, I think.
Yeah, I think it was Russell. Anyway, you've got the counter there. I think we've probably pretty much covered the Australian Grand Prix, don't you?
Yeah, I think that's everything. It's Suzuka next.
Is that next week or the weekend?
It is the weekend after.
Oh, we'll be away at a car show. We might actually be able to do this in person.
We might do, because it's early in the morning, the race. Because
again, I figured we can watch the race, have breakfast, go to car show. It works.
Yeah, I mean the race is at 6 a.m. So
yeah, bizarrely we'll then go to Silverstone a couple of months early, but
yes, not for the Formula One, unfortunately. Although I've seen a lot of video of Silverstone. It looks like a really busy, bit of a sort of nightmare actually.
Yeah, it's a very good area. Anyway, a bit of cross promotion. Toby's got a YouTube channel called Toby.
Yes.
And if you want a good murder mystery, just basically Google Graham H. Miller. I write books as well when I'm not watching the Formula One. Or actually sometimes while I'm watching the Formula One, if it's kind of between pit stops and not much is happening.
Yeah, it depends if Max is winning or not, really.
Yeah, I mean, if Max is, 20 seconds in front, I'll probably get the laptop out and get a few words down.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
We've been Father and Son Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks' time, we will have a report on see what Japan brings us. I'm feeling a lot more hopeful about this season now that we had a race without Max, and a race where I think even if Max was in it, it would have been close.
Yeah, and there's more stories than just can Max get 24 wins out of 24 races. There's a lot more going on, which is fun.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about the politics and who said what and who's going where. It's been good.
For once.
Okay then, well thank you for listening and goodbye.
Bye.